relation to these types of incidents that I was talking about, so this is just from a safety consequence. Here might be some different hazards, but as I mentioned, you could have environmental in here or legal, depending on the nature. You could have community risks as well. So why is it important now? Well, there's a few reasons here. So one, and it's going to be important now and important forever, we don't want people to die at work. We don't want work to be a cause of a fatality. Unfortunately for me, I've been at a mine site where in 2 years we had 2 fatalities. That stuff sticks with me. I do not want that to ever happen again. So we want to get these things right. And there's some interesting stats here about, in 2023, 200 people died at work. That's unacceptable. And our management systems can do something about it. A byproduct too, not the primary driver, but a secondary driver here is if we have deficient critical control management programs and you're in a position of authority or management, then there's potential risk of prosecution under industrial manslaughter. So that's certainly something to think about. And if you own the Queensland mining industry, then come 1st of June 2025, you've got 12 months to get critical controls right before the regulator starts monitoring and reporting on that. So some key drivers happening there around that space. So let's think about the process here that we've got. And this is a process we're going to quickly go through. So our 5-step process to implementing critical controls. 1, we want to define them. 2, confirm it. 3, there's a process around how effective are they. We want to determine, does it meet the criteria for critical control selection? And then finally, we want to finalize those critical controls. So I'm going to dive into that now. So first phase here is around defining the control. So what we want to do, if we've got, so the scenario here is if we've got some risk assessments on our critical risk, might be a bow tie, might be a rack, might have a collection of controls or what we think are controls. What we need to do is ensure that these controls meet the critical foundations and the criteria of a control. They need to be SMIC before we move on into the process, which is banded above here. So for example, these common, which I call common controls, which I see all of the time, do not meet the definition in these 4 foundations. Names of procedures, talk about inspections, some catch-all things around training. What we can see outlined here is an example control that meets all of the criteria, and this is the level of granularity and rigor that you need to have in your controls, or I call them control statements. And how does that help? Is if we can move forwards and start working on this now, or you can do this now, get these controls upgraded to meet these 4 foundations, then it doesn't matter. Forget bow ties or critical controls. We can even use that right now in our current JSAs and risk assessments and outcomes from investigations and audits and inspections and the like. So drive that discipline within the organisation, because we know most of our key incidents are due to a failure of controls. So it makes sense. We really want to nail these controls and implement right way. And there's no point, is there, in moving onwards and considering critical controls if we can't even get controls right. So that's the first part. That's why we've got that first. Get the foundation of the control right. So the second part here, or step 2, is we want to confirm that this control is a true control and it's not a support activity or a verification activity, or it's neither of those and it's not control, it's just something that's not in the framework. So the scenario is you've done the work, you know what the controls are, they meet the 4 foundations, and now before we're moving on, we just want to make sure they're not a support activity. So a support activity is those things that maximize the health of a control. For example, training or maintenance might be one of those. Or a verification activity, which is about something that's in place to check the control is implemented.